My parents skipped my wedding because I got married before their perfect daughter, and now the perfect family image they spent years protecting is finally starting to fall apart. After being together for 4 years, I got married 8 months ago at 32. Everyone came to the wedding, except my parents, and my sister Molin, who is 30. My parents not showing up was still shocking, but I can't say I was surprised by my sister's absence. We've never had a good relationship. Looking back at our history, I probably should have seen it coming. For some background, I can't honestly say my parents favored my sister without reason. Molin has always been good at almost everything. She was the center of attention in every room from the time she was little. In elementary school, she won spelling bees, science fairs, talent shows, all of it. In high school, she was class president, valedictorian, prom queen, the whole package. She was tall, slim, and pretty enough to start modeling in college before focusing fully on her business degree. When she landed her first modeling job during her sophomore year, my parents threw a huge party. They invited relatives, friends, everyone. Her first professional headshot was framed and hung over our fireplace, where it still is today. That same year, I got my degree in computer science. My parents just said, "Well done," and went right back to planning Molin's next photo shoot. After graduation, my sister moved quickly up the corporate ladder. She got hired at a major company, and by 30, already had a corner office and a company car. As a senior executive, I work at a good tech company too, as a mid-level software developer. I actually like my job, and it's stable, but it's not the kind of career that makes my parents brag about me to the rest of the family. It also didn't help that I was always the less impressive daughter physically. I'm shorter and heavier than my sister. Growing up, my mother constantly made comments about my looks. She signed me up for workout classes I didn't want, pushed diets on me, and said things like, "Molin never has to struggle with her weight," or, "You could look as nice as your sister if you tried a little harder." By high school, I had learned to act like those comments didn't bother me, but of course they did. Over time, I accepted the truth. My parents were never going to celebrate me the way they celebrated Molin. For years, I tried anyway. I took classes they suggested, joined activities they approved of, even tried modeling for a short while, which my sister still mocks me for. None of it mattered. I was just the second daughter. They were completely wrapped up in everything my sister did. Sometime in my mid-20s, I stopped trying to win them over. I focused on building my own life instead. I worked on my career, made choices that suited me, and surrounded myself with people who actually respected me for who I was. Honestly, life got better after that. Since my parents cared so much about appearances, I kept my interactions with them polite and shallow. At Christmas dinners and other family events, I smiled, nodded, and let them talk endlessly about Molin's latest promotion, relationship, or vacation. As long as they had her to praise, they didn't seem to notice how distant I had become. Then, at a computer conference, I met the man who is now my husband through a mutual friend. He actually noticed me. He really saw me. Unlike my family, he liked my dry humor, my work, my mind, and yes, even my body exactly as it was. He never once suggested I should change. He never compared me to anyone. After 4 years together, he proposed at home, while we were eating takeout with our favorite show on in the background. It was simple and perfect. Naturally, I told my parents I was engaged. Looking back, their reaction should have been my first real warning. There was no excitement, no congratulations, just silence. Then my mother asked if I was sure I wanted to rush into marriage, and suggested that maybe I should get into better shape before the wedding. My father barely said anything at all. At our engagement party, my husband noticed how strained they were acting, though I was too nervous at the time to fully process it. He later told me that they spent most of the evening huddled over my mother's phone in the corner. At one point, he overheard them talking to Molin, who was apparently crying. He heard them say things like, "This wasn't the plan," and "We never thought Rebecca would get married first." From what he could gather, there were already some problems, because Molin's own imagined wedding timeline had been disrupted, even though she wasn't even engaged yet. During the wedding planning, my mother showed no interest in helping me pick a dress or venue. At that point, she had already made several Pinterest boards for Molin's future wedding. When I chose my dress, a simple but beautiful A-line gown, that made me feel genuinely pretty. My mother only said it was practical and flattering for my figure. My future mother-in-law, on the other hand, treated me like the daughter she never had. She helped me with most of the planning and made the whole process feel warm instead of lonely. My fiancé and I carefully went over the guest list more than once to make sure no one was forgotten before. We sent both paper invitations and electronic ones. I know for a fact my parents received theirs because the digital invitations showed red receipts. When I realized they still hadn't RSVP'd, I called, texted, and emailed several times. Either I got ignored or they gave vague answers about being busy and needing to check their schedules. I was too busy planning the wedding to dwell on it constantly. My in-laws stepped in wherever they could, helping with everything from flowers to seating arrangements. Even at the bridal shower, my husband's sister hosted for me. No one brought up the obvious fact that my own family wasn't there. The wedding itself was beautiful. We had a relaxed afternoon celebration. After a morning ceremony in a garden, everyone said we looked happy and deeply in love. And we were. But there were moments when my parents' absence hit me like a physical pain. Seeing the empty front row seats hurt. So did realizing there would be no father-daughter dance. After the honeymoon, I finally confronted them. When I reached them by phone, they claimed they were deeply hurt because they had never received a proper invitation. My mother launched into a long speech about how careless I had been, how she had always wanted to help plan her daughter's wedding, and how she couldn't understand why I would exclude them from such an important event. I was stunned because I knew that wasn't true. While still on the phone, I checked the records. The digital invitations had been opened, and even the physical invitations had confirmed delivery. I didn't argue. I didn't call them out for lying to my face. I just said I was sorry for the misunderstanding and ended the call. Later, my husband pointed out a lot of things he hadn't brought up before because he didn't want to make me more anxious during the planning process. He reminded me how my parents looked surprised instead of happy when I got engaged, how they found excuse after excuse not to help. Looking back, the pattern was obvious. The idea that I, the less accomplished daughter in their eyes, was getting married before their beloved Molin was too much for them to accept. Their behavior confirmed something I had suspected for years, but kept trying to deny. In their eyes, I would never measure up to my sister. The most painful part was realizing that even my wedding day, which should have been about love and a new beginning, had become just another battle in their endless effort to protect the family image they built around Molin. Recently, Molin got engaged to a man she has been dating for about a year. From what I've heard through relatives and family group chats I'm not part of, my parents are openly thrilled. They're already talking about an elaborate wedding. They're bragging about high-end venues and luxury dresses, and my mother is taking her to private fittings at expensive stores. All the mother-daughter moments I never got to have are suddenly happening for Molin. What's interesting is that a surprising number of relatives are now refusing to attend Molin's engagement party and wedding. Apparently, what my parents did at my wedding has become a topic of discussion in the family. When people ask me why my parents didn't attend my wedding, I tell them exactly what I believe happened. They couldn't handle the fact that I got married before their favorite daughter. I don't exaggerate, and I don't beg for sympathy. I just tell the truth as I see it. A few days ago, my parents contacted me and accused me of deliberately trying to sabotage Molin's wedding. According to them, relatives are now finding excuses not to attend any of her wedding events. A cousin my sister complained and told her that people are staying away because they've heard how my parents treated me. Now my parents are claiming I'm jealous of Molin's fancy upcoming wedding and spreading lies because I can't stand it. The problem is, I'm not lying. I'm only telling people what actually happened. If the truth makes them look bad, maybe they should think about their own actions instead of blaming me for the consequences. As all of this unfolds, it's getting harder and harder to pretend I still have a real relationship with my parents. What they did around my wedding made one thing painfully clear: I was never going to be enough for them, no matter what I did. At this point, their absence at my wedding isn't even the hardest part anymore. The hardest part is accepting that I never had the loving, supportive parents I spent most of my life wishing for. Right now, I'm focused on building a life with someone who genuinely values me for who I am. Still, I said I'd update if anything major happened. First update: a lot has happened since my original post 2 weeks ago. After reading so many kind and encouraging comments, I finally decided to talk to my parents directly about what they did at my wedding and their new accusations that I somehow ruined my sister's special time. When they started texting me again about how I had damaged the family's image, I agreed to have a phone call It went exactly the way you'd expect. They quickly jumped into accusing me of being jealous of Molin and insisting I had planned all of this out of spite. For the first time in my life, I did something different. Instead of defending myself, I agreed with them, but not in the way they expected. I said, "You're right, I am jealous. Not of Molin's career, not of her looks, not of her success. I'm jealous of the love and support you gave her so freely, and never even tried to give me." There was a long silence on the other end. Then my mother started insisting that I was exaggerating and that they had always treated us equally. Something in me finally broke. Years of bottled-up feelings came pouring out. I reminded them of every time my achievements were ignored while Molin's smallest success was celebrated like a national event. I told them how my mother once canceled my high school graduation dinner because Molin got a modeling call back. I told them how my sister's prom dress had cost more than my college books for an entire year. I told them how painful it was to watch them spend years planning Molin's imaginary future wedding while showing almost no interest in my real one. I told them how much it hurt to see their seats empty and to have my mother-in-law step in for everything my own mother should have cared about. Their response was revealing. Instead of taking responsibility, they turned it back on me. "Why didn't you speak up if you felt that way?" my mother asked, as if I hadn't spent years trying. My father accused me of being unfair and bitter for talking to relatives about any of this. Then my mother said something that made everything clear. "We never imagined you'd go this far just to ruin Molin's wedding because of your insecurity about her success." That was the moment I understood they truly weren't hearing me at all. My pain meant nothing to them. The issue, in their minds, was not what they had done to me. It was how my reaction might affect Molin. Even in a conversation about my wedding, their real concern was still her. For the first time in my life, I didn't back down. I didn't soften my words or try to repair the damage. I told them plainly, "You're right about one thing. I was raised by you. You taught me that I would never measure up. You taught me that Molin's accomplishments would always matter more than mine. You taught me that protecting your perfect family image mattered more than my feelings. But you also taught me that I deserve better than this, even if you never meant to." There was another long silence. Then my father spoke in his usual calm, cold voice. He said maybe it was time for them to stop pretending they were bad parents if I had already decided they were. He said I clearly enjoyed watching them suffer and that, as family, I should have helped them fix this situation instead of making it worse. Then my mother delivered the final blow. She said, "Maybe you just couldn't stand not being the center of attention. We always treated you both fairly, Rebecca. It's not our fault you chose to act like a victim." At that point, I didn't even bother arguing. Everything I had said had just been confirmed by the way they answered. They still could not admit any responsibility for any of it. So I simply said goodbye and hung up. What surprised me most afterward was how relieved I felt. I cried, of course, but not the same desperate, broken-hearted tears I used to cry when I was younger. These were different. They felt lighter, like release. For the first time, I had finally said everything I needed to say without apologizing for it. Later that evening, my husband found me sitting on the back porch watching the sunset. He sat beside me and took my hand. After a while, I asked, "They're never going to change, are they?" He squeezed my hand and said, "No, but you have, and that's what matters." He was right. I have changed. The version of me that spent years trying to earn my parents' approval is gone. They do not get to define me anymore. It still hurts to accept that they will never be the people I needed them to be, but it hurts less than continuing to hope they will change. For the first time, I honestly don't care what happens with my sister's wedding or the family drama around it. I said what I needed to say. What happens now is theirs to deal with. The strangest part is that I feel lighter than I have in years. It isn't the happy ending I used to dream about, but maybe it's the ending I actually needed. Finally, giving up on chasing love. That should have come naturally. Yesterday morning, she sent me a carefully worded message. That was classic Molin, polished, condescending, and full of little digs hidden behind fake concern. She wrote that what I said to our parents was completely inappropriate. She said they had supported us both all our lives and that I couldn't just accuse them of being bad parents because I was insecure about my own life choices. Then she added that just because my wedding hadn't turned out the way I supposedly wanted didn't mean I should try to ruin hers. She said there was nothing wrong with wanting a celebration that honored the people who had worked hard to meet certain standards. She told me not everything had to be a competition. I didn't respond. Years of dealing with her had taught me that. Answering her only gave her more to work with. So I blocked her. I assumed that would be the end of it. But Molin has never handled being ignored well. A few hours later, my husband called me from work, laughing so hard he could barely get through the story. Since she couldn't reach me, she had somehow found his personal number, probably through a mutual contact, and started texting him. At first, her messages sounded formal and polite. She introduced herself as my sister and someone who cared deeply about the well-being of our family. But it didn't take long for her real motives to show. She started telling my husband that, as the new man in my life, he had a responsibility to help me behave more appropriately. Her messages became more and more patronizing. She told him family relationships were complicated and suggested that someone as sensitive as Rebecca might not understand the bigger picture. She implied he should help me see reason before I permanently damaged family relationships. Then came the most ridiculous part. She tried to appeal to what she apparently imagined were his ambitions. She wrote that maintaining good relationships with successful family members, like herself, could be beneficial for his future. She claimed that my behavior was hurting my own opportunities, and his by extension. My husband saw right through it and thought the whole thing was hilarious. What amused him most was her obvious belief that her job title and connections would somehow impress him. As he put it, she really doesn't know me at all, does she? That evening, we read through the messages together, and instead of feeling humiliated or angry, I found myself laughing. There was something incredibly freeing about watching Molin's manipulative routine fail so completely, especially when she was trying it on someone who wasn't affected by it at all. That exchange also helped me understand something important. For all her success and confidence, my sister is still the same insecure girl she always was, the one who needs to put other people down to feel superior. The fact that she really thought she could control me by influencing my husband said more about her than it did about me. And when she couldn't manipulate me directly, she immediately tried to go through him instead. That part felt especially familiar. In high school, whenever she couldn't get to me herself, she would try to turn my friends against me. Different time, same behavior. Seeing it so clearly now made me realize that what she did all those years went beyond normal sibling rivalry. She had always worked hard to protect her role as the favored child. She constantly reminded both me and our parents that she was better, prettier, more impressive, more worthy. She couldn't let me have anything without trying to overshadow it. The difference now is that I no longer fall apart because of it. 10 years ago, those messages would have crushed me. 5 years ago, they would have made me doubt myself. Now I'm just tired of the drama. And honestly, I find her transparency almost funny. My husband handled it perfectly. Instead of getting drawn into her mess, he replied with something simple and polite. He thanked her for her concern about my well-being and said that, as my husband, his role was to support my happiness, not manage my behavior. Then he added that if she had concerns in the future, she should direct them to me. He ended with, "Have a nice day." After that, she sent one final message. "I see she's poisoned you against the family too. Don't say I didn't try to help when this all blows up in your faces." Ironically, that entire little stunt only made me more certain that distance is exactly what I need from my family. Her texts to my husband proved that nothing has changed. She still needs to control the narrative. She still sees any break from the family's script as a threat. What I enjoyed most about the whole thing was how badly it failed. Instead of creating a problem between me and my husband, it actually brought us closer. That night, we joked about her messages and ended up planning a weekend trip together. More and more, I'm beginning to understand that real family has nothing to do with appearances or controlling the story. Real family stands with you. Real family makes you feel safe. Real family doesn't try to manipulate the people you love. At this point, I'm more convinced than ever that I'm better off staying far away from Molin's wedding drama and my family's endless power struggles. My husband and I have decided to focus on building our own life instead. People say success is the best revenge, but I'm starting to think real success is simpler than that. It's being at peace with your choices and surrounding yourself with people who support your growth instead of standing in the way of it. By that standard, I feel more successful than ever. Third update, 2 weeks after my sister's failed attempt to manipulate my husband, things have gotten even messier. My parents are now scrambling to repair their reputation, and from what I'm hearing, It's not going well. Through relatives, I found out that my parents have been calling family members one by one, trying to correct the narrative. They're telling people I've been spreading ugly stories about them because I'm jealous of Molin's picture-perfect wedding. Their current version is that I'm bitter because her wedding will be more glamorous than mine, and that I intentionally excluded them from my own wedding so I could later play the victim. The ridiculous part is that they've lived in the same house for 30 years and have had the same email addresses forever. But now they're claiming I somehow sent their invitation to an old address, both digital and physical. It would almost be funny if it weren't so desperate. The good news is that hardly anyone believes them. In fact, several relatives have started sharing their own memories of my parents' favoritism. One aunt told someone that my mother had pulled similar stunts at previous family weddings, always trying to make sure Molin was the center of attention. What's been most satisfying is seeing how badly their attempts at damage control are backfiring. Important relatives, including people who were supposed to play major roles in Molin's wedding, have quietly pulled back their support. There's even talk that they may lose access to the exclusive venue they were hoping to secure through family connections. A family friend who owns a luxury dress business has also suddenly become unavailable. Things really exploded at a recent family gathering. Someone innocently asked to see photos from my wedding, and my mother apparently lost her temper. She launched into an angry speech about how I had changed after marriage and was now trying to destroy the family. The outburst shocked several relatives who hadn't known the full story and damaged my parents' image even more. What's especially ironic is that their frantic attempts to protect the perfect family facade are exactly what's causing it to crumble. Every time they try to justify why they skipped my wedding, they reveal a little more of who they really are. The harder they try to paint me as the villain, the more obvious their own behavior becomes. Family members who used to stay neutral are beginning to take sides. Even my father's brother, who has always kept quiet to avoid conflict, recently apologized for not speaking up sooner about how they treated me. He and his family have now decided they won't attend any of Molin's wedding events. The truth is doing all the work for me, so I haven't had to say much of anything. Whenever Molin or my parents try to twist the story, they end up exposing more of themselves. I'm finally starting to understand that all those years I spent staying quiet to keep the peace didn't actually keep any peace at all. It just protected their behavior from consequences. My husband said it best. They spent years building the image of an ideal family, but it was built on favoritism, emotional manipulation, and appearances. Something built like that was always going to collapse eventually. As for me, I'm doing better than I have in a long time. I don't feel the same pressure to win my parents' approval anymore. I don't feel responsible for managing Molin's emotions. And for the first time in my life, I'm not worried about protecting the family image they cared about so much. I'm learning that sometimes the best revenge is simply letting the truth speak for itself. I'm genuinely grateful to the people who encouraged me to finally stand up for myself. Sometimes strangers can show you what real support looks like.